Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Villa Pride Down Under, an Aston Villa supporters podcast brought to you from Australia. As always, you got myself, Spud, Tess, and Ryno. How are you, boys? How are things?
Good, mate. Good, mate. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good, very good.
Y-
Tess?
Yeah, going good, boys. I've been out a bit earlier on. It's my daughter's birthday tomorrow, so we had a big birthday party today. So feeling a little bit exhausted from that, but I've got a refreshment that will help me go through the night.
Lovely, lovely. Um, for our listeners, this week we've decided to do something a little bit different. We're going to take our listeners and viewers for an old trip down memory lane. So this week we're going to have a little chat about the famous Australians who have donned the famous claret and blue in the Premier League era. So I'm very excited about this episode, boys, because when you start to remember some of the players, it starts bringing back some very interesting memories. So you boys, you excited about this one?
Yeah, really excited about this one, actually. I was thinking about it all week and I was like, I've got to do some research because there's a couple of players in there that I do remember the names and probably never got to see some of them play. There's a couple of names that we've been talking about in a private chat that I do remember and have seen play before. So, yeah, going to be just really interesting to bring up a bit of a memory about those former villains who are from Australia, really. So, really, really excited about this one.
Yeah, it was good
Yeah.
just going back on YouTube, watching old clips and like you say, reading stuff on the net again, sort of bringing back some of the memories and some of the old games. And yeah, you'd forgotten about some of them. So yeah, it was a really nice trip down memory lane.
Ryan, we'll start with you. So you're going to tell us a little bit about our most recent signing. Do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, I've got Mr. Joe Gauci. So he's the latest Australian to represent Villa. Well, hasn't played a game just yet, but moved across from Adelaide United in the A-League in February this year, 2024, and cost us 1.3 million. He's an Adelaide boy, hails from Adelaide, and has currently got 4 caps for the Socceroos. He's found it quite difficult. Like when you look at his career, he's been at a few clubs in the A-League and has started off on scholarship contracts. So went to, grew up in Adelaide, played locally there, but then ended up at the Central Coast Mariners on a scholarship contract. Didn't really get many games there. Then moved to Melbourne City, same deal, scholarship contract, sitting as the number 2. Didn't get any games there. Ended up moving back to Adelaide and back to his hometown club. Again, scholarship contract. So he's done it quite hard, but then he managed to get games at Adelaide. I think their first choice keeper got injured and he got a good run of games. And that's where Villa have seen him and then decided to pick him up. So he's had a slow start to his career. He's only 24, but I quite like that about his character, that he's had it quite tough coming through in the A-League, but he's stuck at it and now he's at the Villa. So yeah, looking forward to seeing him and how he develops, at our club and working with probably the best keeper. Well, he is the best keeper in the world.
Best keeper in the world.
Yeah, best keeper in the world, Emi Martinez. But I've spoke to a lot of friends and family who follow the A-League closely and tried to get, the opinion of what they think of Joe Gauci, and it's pretty unanimous. Everyone speaks very highly of him, especially his shot-stopping ability, and everyone sort of says there's no surprise that he's ended up in the Premier League. You could see his quality early on, even though he hasn't played a lot of games in the A-League, but what he has done has been very good. Excellent penalty stopper as well. You think I've got it written here, he's faced 13 penalties and saved 5. So pretty good record for a keeper. It's not bad. But I quite like that, he's 24. He's obviously a bit of a project for Villa. We've got, number 1 position is obviously sorted with Emi Martinez, but with Joe Gauci coming in, you've got an international level goalkeeper competing. We definitely need competition for that backup goalkeeper spot. But with Robin Olsen sitting there at the moment, I'd say Joe Gauci's probably sitting in 3rd place. And one thing that I don't know about Joe Gauci, having watched clips of him and spoken to a lot of people, is how's his footwork and how is he with the ball at feet, because that's obviously a really important part for the way we play. And obviously Emi Martinez building from the back and taking the ball under pressure and then passing it out to the wing backs and back to the centre backs is, how we draw teams out of shape and how we end up, breaking. It's really important. But I haven't seen too much of that Joe Gauch yet. So that's probably where the upside will come with him. And I think that's what Villa will be working on with him currently. Next year as well, it's going to be interesting because we've got Emi Martinez as number one. And then you've got Robin Olsen. I can't find out when Olsen's contract is up, but I assume he's here for this season. The window's still open, obviously, but that poses a few questions for our backup keepers there, especially Joe Gauci. And does he stay and play, maybe a few cup games, or does he go out on loan and get experience at, top level, into the championship, good level, in the English league and get some experience for the physicality and the speed of the game over here? What do you boys think?
It's an interesting one, that because I thought he was being brought in to be the sort of backup keeper to Emi Martinez. Yet, I guess when you look around on social media at the moment, and because the transfer market's open, there are people still saying that we need a goalkeeper, which kind of surprised me because I thought bringing in Joe Gauci as a young goalkeeper would be an efficient backup, if you like. I thought that would be the plan, that you're bringing in a backup keeper because perhaps Olsen may not be staying on for another season. I think Unai Emery has a lot of confidence in Robert Olsen. Is it Robin Olsen? Robin Olsen. Yeah, so it would be interesting because I don't want to say this. I don't want to really say anything negative about Robin Olsen, but I thought that the signing of Joe Gauci meant that we were probably trying to bring somebody in a bit younger who's going to kind of be there at the club for a little while and probably learn from Emi Martinez as well. So, yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Spud.
Yeah, it's very strange because, we seem to have a lot, a lot of goalkeepers now, don't we? Like, you have Emi Martinez, you have Joe Gauci, you have Robin Olsen, Sinisalo's getting a lot of praise at the moment.
Yep.
Loan, maybe? Would that be, from what you've looked right now, is that something you think would make sense at this point? It depends on who comes in, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, you've got Sinisalo and Philip Marshall then behind Joe Gauci, and Sinisalo's in the Finland squad, so he's obviously developing and been out on loan for a couple of seasons now. I think for Joe Gauci, and no disrespect to the A-League, but it's a different level compared to, English football, the Championship, Premier League. I think if he could get a move to a Championship club, it'd be a really good move for him. And I think for his development, a year out on loan would be the best thing for him currently, but we'd have to have some sort of option, I guess, maybe to bring him back in at short notice if we get injuries, suspensions, because I think Philip Marshall and Sinisalo will probably go out on loan as well. They're guys who are benefiting from being out there in the lower leagues and playing week in, week out, and developing. But I think with Joe Gauci, definitely a loan to the Championship for me would be the preference.
Would you think it's a possibility that they just see a bit of a potential in him and they're just seeing that it's a player that they can bring over, develop, send on loan, and then see him as a profit? Do you think there's a possibility that they just don't, they don't see him as part of the squad right now from your looking at it? Or do you think, from what you're hearing, do you think there's a lot of talent there that they're bringing him in as a Villa? Because the way things are going with PSR now and stuff, this is the kind of smart stuff that they're going to be trying to do. So, are they just seeing an opportunity with him, or do they see a player in him? No.
I think they see a player in him, and it's really interesting when you try and find out the length of Robin Olsen's contract and see where he sits. It's very unclear of where he's at contract-wise. I think he's only signing short-term contracts a year on a year. So I do think long-term, I think they see Gauci as the number two, but there's no, as long as Emi Martinez is at the club, he's obviously number one. But I do think there's room with the cup competitions, and the amount of games we're going to be playing, that we will need to rest Emi Martinez, especially if he's got international duty where he has to fly, across to South America. And so I think they do see him as a backup. But, at 24, he's got plenty of football left in him. But he needs, for me, before I'm comfortable in saying that he's the backup, I'd love to see him get more experience in England first.
So also kind of a little bit weird because you're thinking that he's 24 years old. So it's not like he's one of the youngsters that, you're sort of signing him to meet PSR rules or anything like that, or just sell him on for profit. Like, he's coming from Australia to be in the squad. So I'm wondering whether it's going to be a case of he's being groomed to be the backup keeper, and they've got plans for Olsen. Because again, like I said earlier, like I'm seeing a lot of news that Villa need a goalkeeper. I mean, we've got the best goalkeeper in the world, like bar none, at the moment. He's just like I watch Emi Martinez, he's a superhero for me. And then you think you got a 24-year-old in that's got talent, and you're thinking maybe he's going to learn a lot from Emi Martinez. But what is he going to play? Is he going to go out? And why is there still word that Villa are looking for a keeper at the moment?
Backup keeper is probably one of the hardest positions to find, isn't it? Really, because whoever comes in knows they're going to be playing second fiddle and not playing a lot of games, but you still need someone there who's quality, happy to sit there, and if they do end up getting called up, is good enough to sort of step in. So it's a tough position to fill, that one, but we'll see, because I know, rightly or wrongly, Robin Olsen's copped a lot of flack, hasn't he, in the last couple of seasons that he sort of stepped in. So I feel, whenever he does step into the team now, there's already, Villa fans on his back before a ball's even been kicked, isn't it? So long
It can't be
term,
enjoyable for him. It can't be
no.
like it must be very hard to line up in that tunnel, walking out to a pitch, knowing that probably 50% of that place that just don't want you there, and there's another 20 that are just waiting for you to make an error so they can jump all over you. It can't be a nice environment,
And you can see that in the way he plays, can't you? You can see the nerves. He settles into games, but you can definitely feel that nervous energy with him. So long term, not sure. I think that's, Robin Olsen's getting on as well, but he's got 70 caps for Sweden. You don't get them, being a duffer. Like, it's, but it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of keepers on the books, and they're not all going to sit on the bench.
Definitely one to keep an eye on in the future, isn't it?
Well, I mean, also just on Robin Olsen, while we're down that rabbit hole there, I don't think it's only the supporters that sort of get this apprehension when he's going to line up, because I guess for us as supporters, every time we've kind of watched Robin Olsen play, everyone kind of gets nervous, and what happens is we end up conceding goals. And I don't think it's just on the fan side. Of course, the fans are a bit apprehensive because of the performances that we've seen, but he's also had some really good performances. But it can't be just solely the supporters. I think when he's played, the defense sort of seem to get nervous. The defenders seem to get nervous, and that doesn't help him either. And maybe, I don't know if they would say that they have belief in him, but sometimes on the evidence, when you see the games, it's almost as if the defense kind of crumbles sometimes when he's come on the pitch and he's conceding 3 goals, 4 goals, 9 goals in a couple of games, etc. So surely it's not just the fans, right?
Very hard for the defense not to read into that negative energy in the stadium, though, isn't it? Like, it's like they may not be that nervous, like training with Robin Olsen every day, but then suddenly they probably can feel that tension. And I can't remember what game was. Martinez didn't come back out after half time, and it even sends it on the TV, like the sense of tension around the stadium. But it's definitely one to keep an eye on, Joe Gauci. I'd be interested to see where he is in August. If he is with us, then that would probably say to me. But I think a loan would possibly. Oh, yes, the guy you were going to speak about, Jordan Lydon. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah. So now that we mention it, and in all honesty, like I actually remember the name Jordan Lydon from many years ago, and I think he was like a talent that was going to be coming through the ranks, etc. I remember talking to my brother about it. It's like, oh, we've got this young kid from Australia, like he's just come through the ranks and stuff, and he's going to be like a decent player. And in all honesty, I think I saw him come on and play once. I can't remember the exact game that it was, but I think I saw him once play, but didn't see much more of him then. So like Jordan Lydon, he was born in 1996, defensive midfielder. It looks as though he was born in Perth around that time, and had quite I guess like 2012 was he around Villa's youngsters, and then I think it was around 2015, if I'm not mistaken, around 2015 where he was actually making his debut and being within the first team squad. So that's what I know about him. I don't know where he's at the moment, actually. It'd be interesting to find out. something on here saying that he would have been at Hereford or somewhere like that. So really, really don't really know where he is at the moment. It'd be interesting to find out actually. So if anyone does know
It's
where he is,
funny.
in the
It's funny how
comments.
players can. Yeah, it's funny how players can sort of slip through, isn't it? They're at big clubs like Villa in academies, and then they sort of just drop down the leagues and then just disappear. Like it's crazy. Like yeah, you just don't hear of these boys again, do you?
Yeah, you would just imagine that. I don't know, because some of them you think, oh my god, they've been hyped up as being the new prospect, but then they get one or two games, and all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. So actually, senior career looking like from Aston Villa, went to Oldham on loan, went to Swindon Town in 2023, Leighton Orient, and then on to Hereford. So I'd imagine at the moment, from what I can see, he might be at Hereford at the moment. And cheers to my mate Wikipedia. But look, the good thing I like is that Aston Villa are one of the teams that have actually had talent from Australia. I don't think there are many clubs around the world that bring in talent from Australia into, whether it's the English league or into Europe. There aren't that many, and it's obvious that Aston Villa have some sort of reason why they keep going to Australia to kind of find a talent.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where one of the other players actually came from, so I'm looking forward to one of you guys explaining that to me a bit later. But be interested to find out where one of our super players that we've had from Australia in the past has come from. But yeah, that's my little bit on Jordan Lydon. Have any of you guys seen? Did you see much of him while he was playing?
I remember him. I remember him being in the squad, but I don't remember him ever having much of an impact, as you said there. Like I think he's one of those ones that every summer you come around and you just read that he's gone out in the loan watch again. The loan system and
Mm.
stuff. But yeah, I think there was a period though that he was very highly thought of, like in early doors. But I think he's just one of those players that the loans never like sparked him like they thought it would. I think there was high hopes for him, but in the end, I think he just became one of these kind of players that come back, do a summer, do the preseason, and they're gone out again by
Mm.
August eventually.
Yeah,
But they did give him a pro contract in the end, so they must have seen something. I suppose he was probably there in a period that we were going through a lot of managers too, so that probably doesn't help young lads coming through.
no, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
I was just looking at it like 2012 to 2019, like you say, we were going through managers. Probably wasn't a great time for our club, was it? With the players there, and there's a lot of turnover, wasn't there? So young players were probably no chance. New managers come in, they're looking at the first team more than the youth team, really, and they're just sort of
Mm.
going with what they've got. And yeah, unfortunate, but I can't really remember him, to be honest, fellas. Like, yeah, I
There's
remember
there
seeing
is
the name, but yeah, I can't remember too much.
No, I remember. I'm pretty sure I've seen him play in one of the games, and kind of think, oh, these are one of the youth prospects that are going to come through, and they're going to make their next step in their Villa career. But as you know, when they do make it into their into the academy, and then they come through, they've got quite a lot of talent as to why they're getting in the first team in the first place, or they've got some sort of talent, and that's why they get their senior contract. But then it's not always the case that that talent can transfer to, say, the Premier League style of football, or to that higher level. Maybe it can be too much, or some of these younger players have other things going on in their lives. And you've got to remember, they're coming from Australia, and going to a foreign country, and sometimes it's hard to settle in.
Yeah.
Um, so and as you said, we could have been going through that manager phase at the time, and if we weren't going through a good series of period, because we've had so many managers, then those managers are probably going to more likely go for experience really than try and give the youngsters an opportunity.
Exactly that, and I think that's a very similar story to the guy I'm going to speak about first here, Chris Hurd, because I think
Mm.
he is definitely one of those players who was suffered a bit by the managerial changes we were going through, and the fact that we were fighting relegation as well. So I think a manager is fighting relegation. It's very hard for them to rely on the young lads when they're in that position, which a lot of the period that Chris Hurd was there for us. So Chris Hurd, Shane Lowry as well at the same time, but we won't say much about Shane Lowry because he didn't have much of an impact. But I'll just mention him whilst I'm speaking about Chris Hurd, because they actually came over together from Australia at the same time.
Oh.
So Chris Hurd, basically, he was born in Melbourne but raised in Perth, and he played local football for a club I know well over here, ECU Joondalup, so State League. And Joondalup actually have a link up with Southampton. So he trained Southampton quite a bit, but
Mm.
Southampton actually didn't sign him because they said he was too small. So he came back over here, played a little bit with ECU, and then he ended up playing with one of the Italian clubs over here, semi-professional, called Bayswater City. They'd be well known in the WA football scene, So Villa actually came in from then, and they took the two of them. They took Shane Lowry and Chris Hurd. Now, I don't know, is that to help? Did they bring Shane Lowry? This might be disrespectful, but did they bring someone to help Chris Hurd settle? I do think he was the one out of the two that they seen biggest coming over. So he came over. The two of them joined the Villa Academy in 2005, surprisingly. Like, I didn't think it was that long. I knew they were there a long time, but it was 2005 they actually signed. And he stayed at Villa till he was 2015. So he had a long, long time at Villa.
Yeah, it's a good stint.
Yeah. Was Shane Lowry was he a tall defender, Shane Lowry? Was he a defender?
Shane Lowry was a defender, yeah. And again, he was
tall.
one of those players. Shane Lowry was he was a big tall lad, yeah. And he was it's hard to know, but like, it kind of seems to me it's interesting that they brought the two of them together. Maybe they've seen an opportunity of two players. Maybe they had seen potential in both, or they just seen a better opportunity for them to settle knowing each other, But Chris Hurd, he came, done really well in the academy, and he's definitely one of their players, those players that they had really high hopes for. And he went on a lot of loans, really, but again, it was a mixed bag. But he ended up having a couple of very successful loans, and they brought him into the first team in around, I think it was around 2012 under Alex McLeish, because I remember a game, I don't know if you remember this, he got thrown into play as a holding midfielder in one game, and he got sent off against West Brom, and Alex McLeish was defending him after. I think then he came in, and he kind of had a bit of a breakthrough under Paul Lambert then the following season, and that was it. He went on loan, and then he never really seen any more action. But he played about 15 or 16 Premier League games for us, I think, and a few cup games.
I think I remember, like, there was a cup game that they put him in. I've got Coventry in my head. It might not have been Coventry, but I remember him start in the game, and similar thing. He was in like a defensive midfield role, and he was unbelievable that day, just heading everything, tackling everything,
aggressive as well.
He was really aggressive. Not a big footballer, by any means, but he was just throwing himself about. And I was thinking to myself, because he was winning headers, corners, everything. And I was thinking, we could have picked up another Timmy Cahill, someone who's good in the box, good in the air, but he was full of promise, wasn't he? I remember watching that game, and I was like, he's one to keep an eye on, but just trailed off, didn't it, for him?
Again, I think a lot of that came down to the managerial changes and the position our club was in. Like, we were struggling as a club in that period, like from that 2000 after Martin O'Neill.
So we just about beat relegation, didn't we? Was that under McLeish? Did we just beat relegation or something? And he came from Birmingham.
Birmingham, yeah, and there was the club was quite toxic at that time, obviously, because Alex McLeish had just relegated Birmingham, and then it was never going to work. So I think Chris Hurd might have been caught in that, but that game against West Brom that I remember him getting sent off, and then Alex McLeish was defending him after. He actually got that red card rescinded because that was just the type of player he was. He was aggressive. I think he played a few UEFA Cup games for us. I even think Shane Lowry, one of the only caps he got for us was in the UEFA Cup as well, on maybe the later part of the Martin O'Neill era. But two players, I think that maybe at a different time, the circumstances could have been different for them at Villa, because that's a long time for them to keep a player like from 2005 to 2015 without actually, a player that's in and out of loan. Like, at no point did they make any of those successful loans permanent either. So they obviously did see him as a long-term player, but it's just circumstances probably prevailed against him, and he kind of ended up going off and having a career in Malaysia for himself.
Wow.
Okay.
Is he still playing?
Is he still around?
If he very possibly still playing, if not very, very recently retired. I would go as far as saying I wouldn't be surprised if he was still playing in Malaysia, to be honest, but he's or else recently retired. Yeah. So that's it's funny when you start thinking of these players and you start remembering different eras of the Premier League, isn't it? Like in some of the
PTSD from some of them with some of the eras. Bloody hell, it's taking me back.
And then you had to go mention him and bring up Alex McLeish. And I was like,
So let's talk about a bit more of some positive era for us. And Ryno, we're gonna give you a few minutes to talk about someone we know is very, very special to you. So do you want to name the next Aussie we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I've got.
Thank you so much for talking about me, Ryno.
I've got Bozzy the Aussie. Very happy to pick him out, to be talking about him and watching some of his highlights and going through some of his clips again. And yeah, Mark Bosnich, obviously. And for a lot of people in Australia, a lot of Villa supporters that I've spoken to at, club meets and get-togethers, he's the reason some people of a certain vintage support Villa. He was at Villa, top goalkeeper, and a lot of Australians got behind him. And yeah, he's the reason there's quite a lot of following in Australia as well, which is good. But he joined us in '92 from Man United. I think he grew up in Sydney. Went on the books at Man United. Didn't do very well. They ended up back in Sydney and then came over and then got on the books at Villa then '92. And to be honest with you, he's probably one of the most successful keepers we've had, given the silverware he's won. So he's a League Cup winner, '94 and '96. Played a pivotal role in the '94 Cup run. So in the semi-final against Tranmere in the second leg, ended up going to penalties and he saved 3. I rewatched it again today and just a brilliant keeper.
Oh, did you watch it on YouTube, did you?
Yeah, I've just been pulling up all the old highlights. But I think one thing that a lot of people forget, that early in that cup run, in the second round, we played Birmingham it was 2 legs back then. In the first leg, he came on for Nigel Spink. So Spink got injured, Bosnich came on, Birmingham got a penalty, it was 0-0, and he saved a penalty in that round as well.
What a
So
legend.
incredible, mate. To do it against Birmingham as well, knock them out in the second round, and then to go on that run. And against Tranmere, just, saving 3 penalties, unbelievable. It goes down in folklore, doesn't he, for that, really?
Yeah.
And played the final. And then obviously '96 as well, won the League Cup with us in '96 and was the starting keeper. By that point, had worked his way in as our number 1. It took him a little while to obviously push Nigel Spink out, but once he got in, I think 94, 95 was his first season as our number 1, and he didn't look back, did he? He's just an incredible goalkeeper. I was going through and watching his highlights again, and some of the saves are just incredible. Some of the kits are incredible. I just love the kits from those eras.
The Muller kit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was it
the Muller kit.
Yes.
He wore the Muller one, and then he wore the AST Computers one, which is my personal favourite. But yeah, Mark Bosnich at Villa was probably one of the better goalkeepers in the league. I think goalkeeping back then was very different to what it is now. Goalkeepers are obviously, sweeper keepers they're referred to now, but that wasn't really the case back then. Keepers were just known as shot stoppers and just lumped the ball forward. And Mark Bosnich was one of the best in the league at that time for me. And obviously went on to play. Man United took him back in the end, which I'll get on to. But there's a reason why, Sir Alex Ferguson came back in for him, because his form for Villa was incredible. So yeah, from '92 up until '99, he was with us. Brilliant goalkeeper, obviously made the headlines as well off the field. It's quite well documented, isn't it, with Mark Bosnich? They're colourful on the field, very colourful off the field.
Just
and
a
I
bit
was
of
just
character,
going through
that's all.
Incredible. And I was going through the history, and and obviously going through Mark Bosnich, and one thing that that came up is obviously his collision with Jurgen Klinsmann in, I think it was '95. Came out of the box, rushed out the box, pretty much knocked Klinsmann out, went for the ball, got nowhere near it. And then we played at White Hart Lane.
Klinsmann was a diver. He was a diver. hey. I haven't seen it back, but I'll just say.
Right. Not guilty,
Yeah.
And from that, then obviously, I think it was the year after we played at White Hart Lane, he was getting a bit of stick from the Tottenham fans, and obviously Mark Bosnich regrets this now, but he was obviously gave a Nazi salute, so that just kind of sums him up. He was just an incredible goalkeeper, but with just crazy headlines off the field. Was always in scrapes, and very good friends with Dwight York. Apparently, was his best man at his wedding, and I was reading that he got locked up on the night before his wedding. Those two were getting up to a bit of trouble in Birmingham. So for anyone who's interested, there's a fair bit of it is documented. But and for me, like I've said on other podcasts, for me, he was my hero growing up, Mark Bosnich, and my favourite player. And when he left to go to Man United. He was 99 and his contract ran out and he left us and joined United. I was heartbroken. And people say you don't know real heartbreak when you're young. I disagree, because Bosnich went to United in 99 and I think York went in 98. So we lost two of our best players to Man United. And I've never really recovered, boys. I'm still sad about it now, and I still hate Man United for it. So. But sorry, mate.
No. I was just going to say, Tess, what was your kind of early memories of Mark Bosnich?
Yeah, as I said, that was the kind of time when I was actually becoming a Villa supporter, because as you know, I became a Villa supporter quite late. I didn't really follow football until quite late on. And it was around that time when Bosnich was the keeper, because I remember having the Muller kits and stuff. So yeah, I remember him just being a really good goalkeeper. I do remember all the bits and pieces after he left Villa. I felt like it was a situation again with like a Dwight York, where it was kind of like I think Villa was a good place for him to play his football. And he seemed like he was happy there, but as soon as Man United come knocking on the door, then they want to leave and they want to go to Man United and they want to win trophies and they want to do all this kind of stuff. But never think it always works out for everybody that goes and moves to another club in the way that they were kind of idolized, like they were at Villa. So yeah, I always thought he was a fantastic goalkeeper. I still think he's probably been one of the best goalkeepers that we've ever had. Just behind Martinez.
Yeah.
Because Martinez is Martinez. But he
amazingly
was...
too. He's the last keeper that has won something.
He won trophies as well, right? So, look, loved Bosnich. I loved that he had some sort of character. And back in those days, footballers weren't the athletes that they are today. No disrespect, but they were football players, and they had lives outside of football. They didn't have to have that kind of discipline that
media trained and whatnot.
Media trained and all these sorts of things. That they were the type of that would go and play football straight after the match. They'd go and meet the other players in the lounge, and they'd go and have a few beers and stuff. And then if they
society as a whole was a bit different though, then, wasn't it? Like some of the stuff you say and stuff like it was kind of. Yeah, but like you'd look back at Mark Bosnich and stuff, and he's like I know, like as Ryno talked about the heartbreak and stuff there, but I think vast majority of fans, even though they were hurt when he left, most fans would look back at Mark Bosnich in a positive frame as a Villa fan. I think
positive frame, yeah. Of course, every player has
trailed off a bit.
Yeah, it did. His career did trail off. Didn't he go down to London and then it's kind of went all pear shaped from there?
He was at United, wasn't he, again for a bit? Won a league title there, and then Barthez came in, so he didn't play any games, and then ended up at Chelsea. And
did they bring Bosnich in after the Champions League final when Peter Schmeichel retired?
Yeah, he
kind of brought
replacement.
In.
So there was him,
Barthez as well.
Yeah, so they had Bosnich, Taibbi, and Raymond van der Houw there as the three, and then Bosnich had a full season there. And then they bought Barthez in the season after. So that was pretty much
that season. He would have played, if I remember correctly, he would have played 20-odd games that season, though, didn't he? He actually played a bit in that 99 season, didn't he? Because I think the first stint he was there, he only played like 3 or 4 games, I think, his first stint. But something like that anyway. It wasn't much anyway. I might be wrong with 3 or 4, but I think he, and then I think his second stint, I think his second stint was 20-odd. But I can't remember, did he play much at Chelsea, though? Or was his career kind of gone at that stage?
No, I had a quick look through, and he didn't play a lot of games here, a lot of injuries, a lot of off-field stuff, obviously. But Chelsea would have signed him, and I'm just trying to think who would have been there at that point as well, competing with him. I can't think now.
When would that have been? Around 2001, 2002?
What's his name? The Dutch goalkeeper, De Hoy. Carlo Cudicini, Ed De Hoy.
Ed De Hoy.
So before we move on, lads, right? Before we move on, I just want to ask you something on Mark Bosnich. If you were asked in the morning to do your best Villa 11 of all time, would he be in there ahead of Martinez at the moment?
For me, yes, just because of the 2 titles, the two trophies. Yeah, the 2 trophies probably set him a little bit apart. For me, yeah, that's just though. Emmy's on his way, but
I have to agree with you, Ryno. I think because he's got something in the bag. I think he has to actually get the look in at the moment. I think that would be fair and the right thing to do. I think they're two different types of goalkeepers, though,
Yeah.
and two different areas. So
Yep.
it does make it does make a difference to me. But if you're talking about, because I asked a question one time, if we were to win a trophy and stuff, would someone like Tyrone Mings and John McGinn become legends of the club? And the answer is they probably have to win something. They have to win a trophy or something to get that status. Even though they've been through, the championship and they've come through to the Premier League, they have a trophy, but it's not. It wasn't the winner's trophy. It was a runners-up sort of trophy.
Yeah.
So because he's won something, I think he would have to be number one keeper at the moment if we were going to do the best 11. I think he would have to. He's earned the right to do that, I think.
Do you think, though, does it just take one trophy for Martinez to take that spot in your eyes? Because, like, when Bosnich was there, Villa were always relatively decent team. Like, I know Martinez came at a time when we were on the way up, but he's also transformed the team in a kind of a way too. Like, would one trophy do it, or do you think he has to match the two trophies, or do you think just longevity would do it?
I think one trophy would definitely do it for me. He's that good, and he's such a big part of our club now, isn't he? In the way we play, and him representing our club, winning the World Cup and the Golden Gloves as well. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, if he wins one, he does it for me.
Did Mark Bodgins play for Australia much, Ryno?
He didn't have many caps actually. He had 17, and he sort of goes, when you 17 caps, and he's got one goal actually against the Solomon Islands. Scored a penalty.
Did you ever do that, Emmy? Did you? So Emmy has to score a goal and win a trophy.
It's one of his regrets when you read some of the stuff about Mark Bosnich, that he obviously prioritised his club football at the time, and travelling back and forth to get across to the Australia games wasn't a priority for him. But he sort of says that he regrets that now, and he would have definitely wanted to play more games. And then Mark Schwarzer sort of came into the scene as well then, and sort of took the spot, and very hard to get it back from Mark Schwarzer.
He was a good keeper, Schwarzer, yeah.
Schwarzer was a very good keeper, and he had the longevity, and of course he had the benefit too of, like, Australia had been moved into the Asia division away from the Oceania, so he was playing more competitive games against Japan and China. There was games Australia were winning 32-0 against, like, the American Samoa and things like that, and it was going Tonga and so it was just gone crazy, so like you can kind of understand why Bosnich probably found that was a long trip. Plus, he obviously loved the party, so he'd probably seen the international weeks as his time to shine. But another guy we're going to speak about next, and I think we can definitely put Bosnich down as one of those players that will be forever remembered at Villa. I think, he's just kind of he's without doubt the most famous Australian to put on the shirt for Villa Park. I think there's absolutely no one would question that. Yeah. The guy I'm going to speak about next, lads, and he's someone I must say I was really excited when he signed, and I'm going to speak about Brett Holman. So Brett Holman, he started at Parramatta Power, which is like the ECU Joondalup or Chris Hurd only in Sydney. It's like a state league team, semi-professional. They had a really good season there, and he was born in Sydney, so he was a local lad. He got snapped up by Feyenoord, so he moved to Holland, relatively young, and never really made the impression in Rotterdam. I don't think he ever played with the first team. But in Rotterdam, they have another club called Excelsior. I'm sure you would have heard of them over the years. So they're actually the other, but they're like their little brother. They're there, but they're not really. They're nowhere near the size of Feyenoord, but they're always in and out of the Eredivisie. But decent club. And he kind of took off. He went on a loan there, and he done really well there. So there was another club. He's quite a few appearances on loan and scored quite a few goals, Brett Holman. So then he got wrapped up from a team called NEC Nijmegen, and he done really well again there. And I can't remember if he was on loan at NEC Nijmegen, though. I think he might have been a permanent then. But then his breakthrough really was in 2008, if you remember, when Louis van Gaal took over the AZ Alkmaar team and won the league.
Yeah.
He actually won the
Yeah.
Eredivisie, so he was a huge part of that AZ team under Louis van Gaal, and he done really well, and he was starting to really forge a bit of career for himself. Went to the 2010 World Cup. He scored in the World Cup against Ghana in one of their opening group fixtures. So he was really building a big reputation for himself, and he had 3 really productive years at Alkmaar. So then Villa signed him. I'm pretty sure we signed him on a free transfer, if I'm correct. Not a year's
Yeah,
contract,
I think it
and due
was.
to a second. So I don't know. At the time, I was very excited. He was really building quite a reputation around Europe for himself because of what he was doing with Van Gaal at Alkmaar. So I was quite excited about it. And it was just after McLeish had been sacked. So he kind of came in that summer in the transition from McLeish to Paul Lambert. So then he had his debut, and I remember this so clearly, his debut against Burton Albion. And you know where you get so carried away with players in preseason, and he ended up scoring on his debut against Burton Albion, and I was like, yeah, I knew this lad was going to do it for us. Like, you know, he was like singing his praises.
He's in the pub like, I told you about him.
I was probably waffling on after a few points about this guy's going to be a brilliant signing. But I genuinely thought it was a great signing at the time. No, I don't, you know what? Like it got a lot of headlines. Like there was a couple of clubs in from, so it was a brilliant free transfer at the time. So
did McLeish sign him and then got sacked and then he arrived? Is that how it worked? Or
I think that's it. Or even at that time, remember Villa had a bit of a transfer board. Like they had like that. Remember that Sergeant fella, or whatever his name was, or they had like a transfer board. So I don't know, was McLeish actually the one who sanctioned around that period? I don't think any manager was really sanctioning transfers. Was it once Martin O'Neill walked? I think you had that board like that. That soldier who used to advise Randy Lorne or whatever. I think he was the kind of running the show there. And so I think maybe McLeish would have sanctioned it, but I don't think whether he was the one who headhunted him or what, I don't know. But maybe. But I think it was very clear come the end of that season that McLeish wasn't going to be there come August anyway. I think either way he was either going to get sacked or walk. So but Holman came in and he started Paul Lambert, done really well in that opening game against Burton Albion. And then he scored in his last preseason game as well against Peterborough. And I was like, yeah, this guy's going to win the season. It just never got going. Like, and he was getting games for us in the league. But he didn't actually score his first, after playing most of the season, he didn't score his first goal in until in December away at QPR. And that was the only league goal he ended up. Yeah, so that was
6 months
4
in,
or 5
right?
months.
Yeah.
And that's probably what 15, 16 games at that point. And he was playing every game, starting every game as well. Like, so that was a bit disappointing from your right winger, like a guy who was kind of coming in with a reputation of like a goal scoring winger, you know. And we played that 4-4-2 at the time, so it's not like he was a wing back where he had defended. Like he was involved in a lot of attacks too, so just never worked for him.
So it stopped you from going to the pub. It stopped you from going to the pub and talking about him.
And it's sorry, what were you going to say there as well, Ryno?
Why do you think it never worked out for him, mate? Do you think he just struggled with the pace of the league, or just
it's very different?
The manager didn't fancy him?
Well, he was Lambert was starting him for most games in that first half of the season, and but like you only have to look at like Dirk Kuyt, who ended up having a great season or career at Liverpool. But like his goal scoring statistics in Holland were absolutely insane. It was like 95 goals in 115 games or something like that. And he was never prolific for Liverpool, you know. And you look at like Wilfred Bonny as well. He was mental scoring stats in Holland and came to Swansea. And he done okay, but like for what the stats showed, like they never reached that level. So obviously it's a lesser league, you know. So it just never happened for him. And I think he might have picked up a little injury around that Christmas. And the second half of the season, he just didn't end up playing much. And he scored one more goal in the cup after in the second half of that season. And that was it. He ended up having 27 appearances that season, 2 goals. And that was it. That was got to the end of that season. And he, due to mutual agreement, they decided not to go for the second year. And he ended up moving to the United Arab Emirates to sign for Al Nassr. So
to be fair, though, we weren't that good then, were we, under Lambert as well? No. We weren't that good, and it's not like we were a good team and being able to create a lot of opportunities for the strikers at that time. If I'm not mistaken, I thought that we were one of those teams that we were struggling to find goals. We didn't really have the players that would complement players like
we were good in patches.
Benteke as well. It was probably
We
before
were good in
Benteke.
patches when I remember Holman. I think I was the same as you, Spud. Like I was excited when he signed. I thought free transfer. Looking at his record, no brainer. This is going to be a player for us. But like you say, just I remember him getting injured, and then it just petered off for him. Then never really worked. But I
Mm,
seem to when he did play early. I think I remember playing when we beat Liverpool. I think it was like 3-1 at Anfield in the glow in the dark shirts, and Benteke was there. I'm pretty sure Holman played in that game and was pretty decent in that game,
mm.
but that would have been few and far between good outings for him. Yeah, unreal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, do you have any memories of him,
Was he?
Tats?
No, not really. To be honest, I I don't remember really. I remember seeing him play. I don't remember him scoring a goal. I can't think of a goal that I remember him scoring that I can kind of say, oh yeah, and he scored that goal, and that was really important for us. That's my. Yeah, I don't remember much about him, to be honest. Um, yeah. What's he? Is he? So what would he be doing now? Do you know?
I think he's involved in coaching in Australia. I think he was another one who kind of danced around the Middle East and Malaysia for quite some time, and then in the end, he just kind of moved back to Sydney, and he finished his career at Brisbane Roar. But he's only 40 now, so I mean, it's like I would say he
Wouldn't.
wasn't that old when he came to Villa, like
No.
so.
Mm.
Yeah, he finished his career at Brisbane Roar, I think, and yeah, it's just one of those ones that ended up being a bit surprising.
Maybe
Guys,
coaching or something.
Guys, we're gonna speak about a bit of an iconic hero of Aston Villa to wrap it up. And Tess, I know we're looking forward to having a chat about this guy. So, do you want to talk to us about the last one, the last man to hit there?
Yeah. So, if I'm not mistaken, so we have do you remember Tony Shah? He was the owner. Uncle Tony, was it Uncle Tony or something like that? People used to
Dr.
refer
Tony.
to him. Yeah, it was Dr. Tony Shah, but I think some people used to call him Uncle Tony because he used to go on Twitter and stuff and like give people like seats and stuff and boxes and stuff. He used to say, "Oh, don't worry, I'll buy you a seat and I'll give you a seat in the box or whatever it was." And he announced that there was going to be like a new signing coming to the club. 2016, was it 2016? We're in Championship. 2016,
Yes,
I think it was.
you're
Yeah,
relegated May to 2016. Yeah.
yeah, and so they were doing this weird thing on Twitter, and they were going to announce that there was a new signing, and then that signing happened to be our friend, the Beard, Mile Jedinak, who
What a
was
legend. Yeah.
look, he was from the get because while we were in the Championship, it was difficult for me to actually get to watch all of the games. Being out here, it was really hard to try and to get any games at all, actually, unless you had sort of one of the subscriptions to one of the cable channels over here. Other
Yeah.
than that, you
Yeah.
might get one or two games that were going to be on, but they were on at a ridiculous time in the morning that you just couldn't watch, and it was just quite hard to watch Championship games. So I didn't get to see all of the Villa games during the Championship during the two main seasons. So the season where we lost to Fulham in the final, and then I think we beat Derby in the second one, right? So yeah, so Mile joined Villa in 2016 and signed for 3 years. Made his debut and we lost. And I was like, that's it, ship him out. That's it, I've had enough. I think that was who was it? Bristol City or something like that. Anyway, so I know that he scored his first goal for Villa. It was a draw with Sheffield United, and he was instrumental against Middlesbrough in a semi final where he scored a goal as well. So yeah, was a really good player for Villa, and he just seemed to be one of those players who just made us feel like a strong team again. For a couple of years, in my opinion, I watched Villa. We were really like a really light touch. We had nothing, like nobody to kind of no strength in kind of midfield, and a team that I felt like we were bullied by a lot of teams, and we had talented players, but we didn't really have any sort of strength and guts and all that kind of stuff. And when Mile Jedinak came, looked at this bloke, and he just looked like this big tower of figure, man, like big, like broad beard as well. And came to Villa, and he just seemed to be a rock for us. He just seemed to embrace the club as soon as he got there, and he was just a rock for us. So he was really instrumental as a player for Villa. Came from Australia, obviously. I didn't do my research about where he was born, etc., where he's come from, but I do know that he was an international. I think Postecoglou. Actually, I think Postecoglou was the Australian coach, and I think he made Jednak the Australian captain, if I'm not
Oh, okay.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
so I'll have to double check on that. But from what I remember, I remember he was an international, and I remember that I'm going to say, without researching it, that I think Postecoglou made him the captain of the Australian national team. So probably makes sense as to why nowadays, after Jednak was at Villa doing some coaching, etc., I think he's now gone to Spurs and doing some coaching
Yeah.
under Ange Postecoglou, because I think he knows him that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
look, fantastic player for Villa. I think he was a fantastic servant for Villa as well. Just brought something different type of energy. And yeah, really enjoyed him playing for us.
He's a true legend, really, isn't he? Like I think
Yeah.
when the championship, they brought Mealy Ednack, Glenn Whelan, those type of players in just to bring a bit of backbone to the team, like, because we were really bad that first year in the championship. I think there's no denying that. But they're the kind of players you bring in, like. But Ryno, I wanted to ask you on your opinion on something on Mealy Ednack. We got promoted. He obviously had that iconic moment with taking the penalty against Derby when he or against West Brom, sorry, when he just
West Brom.
stared into the crowd and eyeballed the crowd. And for me, I know it was a bit of surprise, but I want to ask you, were you surprised that they didn't give him a contract for that first year in the Premier League? Looking back now, do you think that was a mistake by Dean Smith?
100%. I thought he was going to get one, and you guys are spot on. You've already touched on it. Guys like Jedinak, Mings, McGinn, Glenn Whelan, they came in when we had no characters at the club. We were very soft, no backbone. Players were there just for wages. The guys we just named, they're the ones that turned the club around and started getting us back on good footing. And for to get us back into the Premier League and then to not offer him a contract, I was really disappointed. I think he had a lot to offer in his versatility, his character. He's played in that league before. Yeah, I felt like it was a mistake. And I think players like that have earned their keep and probably deserved another chance in the Premier League. Not playing every game, but definitely a squad player who can fill in defensive midfield, or he played centre back for us a bit as well. And I was disappointed. I thought it was a mistake. Did Steve Bruce or Dean Smith sign him? I can't remember.
No,
he
was signed in 2016, which would have been under Di Matteo originally, wouldn't it?
Di Matteo
I'm
originally.
not 100% sure, but if he was signed in 2016, then I would say it would be Di Matteo.
But the thing about him also is that he had this deal about him, and if I'm pretty sure he was at Crystal Palace when they were in the Championship and helped them get promoted to the Premier League as well. And then he was still a good player for Palace. Yeah, he helped keep Palace up there. He was a good player for Palace. So when you kind of see that he was going to come to Villa, you got some credibility here. This is a person who knows what to do in the Championship and has been doing it in the Premier League for Crystal Palace. So it was a shame that he didn't get offered the contract, to be honest.
Tess, looking back at that first season, sorry, Ryno, go on.
I was just going to say, same for you boys. What do you think with him, not getting a deal when we went up? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say to Tess there, so when you look back now and you see Dean Smith in that first year in the Premier League and how it ended up, and we happened to firefight on the last day of the season and struggle for points, would you think of giving his time again? Do you think Dean Smith would look at that transition a bit different now? And do you think if you got to sit down with Dean Smith in the morning and asked him about Mealy Ednack, even look, Glenn Whelan was probably gone a bit old at that stage, I think it was probably the right move with him. Alan Hutton, for me, look, I don't want to get pelters here, but I always kind of felt Alan Hutton was a bit overrated anyway. I don't think he was a bit more of an iconic figure as opposed to a brilliant footballer. He tried hard and stuff. So I know Alan Hutton, I've seen him in interviews, and he was very upset the fact that he didn't get that contract, and I can understand because he he committed a lot to the club, but I think that was the right call. That was just my own personal opinion. But when I think of Mealy Ednack, I do think Dean Smith would look back and think that was a mistake. Now, I understand he was in a position where he probably needed to transition the club, but when you look at the amount of players they had to bring in, like you're bringing in like a young Dougie and stuff, how much would Dougie benefited to have such a professional next to him like Mealy Ednack? You know, that kind of way. Like, even if Ednack came into the Premier League and played 16 to 20 matches, I'm sure he would have been happy with that, you know? Because I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I've seen interviews where Mealy Ednack said he was very surprised himself not to get it. Did he replace this?
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut in there. I think he would have. I think he deserved to get a new contract. I'm also of the opinion that probably Dean Smith had a mandate. He was told this is what we need to do. We're still on this 5-year plan, and we're gonna start bringing in some younger players, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And I found it quite difficult actually when he wasn't going to sign it, because I felt like we still needed that. We still didn't want to be that soft touch in the Premier League. And what happened was when we had that first season and we managed to survive and stuff, did we still look weak? We still looked like we'd gone like soft again in a way. And I think someone like Milo Jedinak being there, even if he didn't play every single game, you've got him standing there, like he's sitting on the subs bench. He's in and around the squad. You know, he comes on for 20 minutes here and there to shore things up. I think he would have been a perfect person to actually keep at the club. I understand the Glenn Whelan situation, obviously, because he'd been, but Milo Jedinak, he still had football in him, right? Like he still had the ability to still play football. He had the ability to lead people. He was a captain. He would have been able to help the youngsters, the younger people coming in, and he would have been able to put some sort of shift in. So, yeah, I was actually quite disappointed, especially seeing someone like him who's come from the Championship and helped bring us to the Premier League. You just feel like they need an opportunity to play in the Premier League because they did all of that work to help us get there, and I thought he was instrumental. To be honest, that's my opinion without ranting.
He had trodden that path for Crystal Palace, kept promoted, keeping in the division, and to me it seemed a bit strange that Dean Smith didn't go for that. But Tess, you made a very good point, though. Like Dean Smith may have had a remit to get the age of the squad down, and we know now that the club has transitioned to a little bit of buying players that are younger that will have resale value eventually. So maybe that was the beginning of the process, but I still think as a club, and obviously, look, hindsight's great. Now we can look back to, well, it all worked out. We made the Champions League. That could have been very different. We didn't get that draw against West Ham, and I do think if you did sat Dean Smith down in the morning, I think he would probably say, if I had to make that decision again, I would change that. Would be my opinion. I might be wrong, but Dean Smith, I don't think Dean Smith made an awful lot of mistakes in his time at Villa, but I think that would be one that I would say I was definitely strange. I was very surprised when I heard it. Like, of all the players, I thought definitely the one to take up, because none of those players, very few of those players had Champions League or Premier League experience. Like, that did time and got relegated. Grealish, mix and that. So yeah, it's definitely one. He's definitely someone that will be looked at favorably by the Villa fans, though. I think
always. I think so.
Someone who dislikes him, and obviously he ended up going on to play an important role within the club structure for a while after, when he didn't last long there, but he became the head of the loans department. So that was an interesting transition for him. I know obviously he's gone to Spurs, but what's your overall take, Emilian Jedinak, from the two of you? If I was to ask, what's the kind of memory you have from, like, positive?
Very positive. And the stay
yes,
for the West Brom game. That's just burned in my memory. But yeah, big game player though. Always took penalties at Palace and for Australia, captain country Palace. Just a leader, wasn't he? And yeah, just brilliant to have around the club, and just one that I sort of credit, like I said earlier, with turning that terrible dressing room around and getting good character back in there.
Yeah, I would say the same. Always positive memories for Milo Jedinak. Most of all, I mean, The beard
The
was
beard.
I mean, there's just like he just looked like a monster in for us, like he was that just big, powerful bloke, just scary in a way, and you knew that if you're going into a game against Villa, like, and he's playing, you're in for a game because he was that hard worker, he was that leader. So yeah, I loved Mile, and good luck to him. I know he's at Spurs now doing stuff. What would you think he would be? What if you were to ask him about Aston Villa? What do you think he would say about his time?
Oh, I think he would have enjoyed it. I think he would have. I think he would have looked it back, and he would have looked at it that he ended up passing the remit. Like, he was obviously brought in to get the club back into the Premier League, and he was a big part of that. I mean, as Ryno touched off a while ago, he gave himself up a lot too. Played a lot in the centre back position for us, which he clearly, he played a lot out of position. He carried the team in a lot of instances, character wise. I mean, I think he gave us lifts in certain games. Because he's a leader, even though he wasn't the captain. He is a natural leader, and yeah, I think his time positive. I do think he probably would be a bit disappointed that he didn't get that year in the Premier League. That he will feel that he earned. I think, right
Yeah.
now.
100%. Yeah, it's a shame he sort of hung around the club when he sort of went into, retired. I was hoping he'd stick around. I know the loan stuff was good for him, but I was disappointed to see him go on again then under Ange. Obviously, I like people like that hanging around the club, good characters.
Yeah.
Just someone who's been there from the Championship, knows what it's about, come up. And I would love to have seen him stayed in some coaching capacity. It doesn't happen, unfortunately, and has moved on. But yeah, good luck to him. I think everyone looks back at his time very favourably.
Boys, it was a really good chat tonight. I really enjoyed it to take a little trip down memory lane, and got a few interesting memories jog into the mind there, and a few smiles.
Yeah.
And when you think immediately Ed Mark Bosnich, and like, when we talk about doing this episode, it's surprising that there was 7 in the Premier League era, wasn't there? Like, you have obviously your Bosnich and Jednak stick out to your mind straight away, but like, there's been a connection. So obviously it is a place that they looked at for talent. But before we wrap up, is there anything two of you'd like to say before we go?
I've got one question for you boys, actually, just a quick one. There's been a lot of good Australian players in the Premier League over the years. If you could pick one player from any team or era, Australian player, to have represented Villa, who would it be and why?
Want me to go first?
Go for it, mate.
First. You go for it.
Mark Viduka for me.
Beautiful.
I thought Mark Viduka was a machine. I mean, he just had everything. He could head a ball. He was strong. He was nasty. He goal scorer. He's as well to punch on a fella after tackle him, and he was rough and ready, but he could mix it up. But he was fast as well, so he could he could impose himself on any style of a game. Yeah, I think, and he was in the Premier League at the time. We were struggling for strikers ourselves. I think he's someone that would have fitted in lovely, and he done really well everywhere he went, didn't he? Like, every club he played for, he scored goals. I mean, I got to see him a lot too, because I watched Celtic a lot, obviously, at the time when he played for them, and and then he tore it up at Leeds. He was massive at Leeds. For me, I think it would have to be Mark Viduka.
Yeah, good player, very good player. Oh, could I have 2? No,
Only one, mate. Only one.
I'm gonna go Tim Cahill.
Good choice.
Good one.
Love Tim Cahill, and I think earlier on in his career, I'm not sure what he was doing. Did he play at Millwall before he went to somewhere like Everton? I know when he went to Everton and stuff, he was just this tenacious kind of midfielder. Like, watching him play, I just love the way, when players have a certain style of play, like the way that they move and the way they just do things on the pitch. He had this kind of swagger about him that he used to just do things. But I think towards later on in his career, it was just, you see Tim Cahill, and like, don't let him in that box. Don't let him in that opposition box.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, for me, he didn't look that very big. He didn't look very big at all. But when he jumped, it felt like he was like a basketball player or something. Like he was like huge, this huge bloke. And I just used to love seeing him like head balls in and just have this tenaciousness about him. And I loved his celebrations as well. I thought his celebrations were awesome. But he was just one of these players that it reminds me of like, I used to like watching Lee Sharp when Lee Sharp used to be a Man United player. Like just the way that Lee Sharp used to play. He just had this style about him that you think, oh, I just like the way he plays. He wasn't like the best player in the world, but he just had this nice way of playing. And Tim Cahill for me was that person. He was, for me, probably my favourite Australian player, Tim Cahill, if I'm going to be honest, like that's not in the goalkeeper's position. And then I would have gone for Mark Schwarzer after that because I thought I like goalkeepers and he was a really good goalkeeper. So I didn't quite choose two, but I just wanted to throw Schwarzer in there.
Tim Cahill's great shout.
He's
one
a
of
good
those
shout.
players I used to love watching because I think when Everton signed him, just that ability to score in the box, like just big game player, always turned up at the World Cups for Australia with a few goals, just self,
I did the same as you, mate. I was Mark Viduka, the Duke. And the reason why I picked him, I remember him at Celtic. I remember watching quite a bit of Celtic games when he first turned up there. And I was like, this guy's unbelievable. Just ripped it up in Scotland, didn't he? His goal scoring.
Far too good for that league. Like,
yeah. And then I remember him coming down. He came to Leeds and just a big, burly striker, but with lovely feet, though, and could finish. And like you said, at that time, we were crying out for a striker of his build and his skill set. And funny story, I bumped into him I was backpacking in Australia in 2007 and I was going to get cash out of a cash point in the CBD. There's a fella stood in front of me, big unit, stood behind him, big lad, turns around, it's Mark Viduka. And at this point, he just finished at Middlesbrough and it was rumours of where he was going next, and obviously he ended up at Newcastle. But I sort of got a photo with him. There's a photo on Facebook of a young Ryno and big Mark Viduka, and I sort of said to him at the time because I knew he was looking for clubs, like, what about the Villa? And he sort of just laughed it off basically at that point. But I did try, boys, to get the Duke there, but he wouldn't have any of it.
Wait, you were at the cash point. You should have just given him the cash and told him to come.
But an honourable shout out as well to Harry Kewell because similar era as Mark Viduka playing at Leeds, and the goal he scored against us at Elland Road where he just bounces just over the halfway line and he just hits it. I think it's David James in goals for us at the time, if I'm not mistaken, and he beats him from miles out. And he was unplayable at one point, Harry Kewell, probably the best player in the world at that time. Yeah, I think I don't think anyone could touch him really at that point, and he was unstoppable. He scored some cracking goals, another one against Arsenal. He similar left-hand side, just smashed it from like 35 yards out straight in the corner. So it'd be, I'm going to go with Tess here, just pick one, but I've chuck the second one in anyway.
You've got to be able to just chuck one more in, haven't you? You can't just have the one.
Yeah.
If people want to get in touch with you and follow you on Twitter and your socials, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, just on the bottom of my screen there, you can see at Cuban_night on Twitter. Oh, it's on X. Sorry, on X now. Cuban Night on Facebook and also on Instagram, Threads. Whichever social media, I always have the same one.
Ryno?
Ryno_Watkins on X. For Instagram, I think it's Ryan_Watkins3. But yeah, jump on our Facebook page or our Instagram or our X page and you'll find us on there.
And Sammy, if you want to get in touch, it's at AVFC Spud. Capital A, capital S, but more importantly, get in touch with us on our own socials. You can see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen now. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we love the interaction, guys. We keep saying this every week, but it is important. If you ever want any content that you'd like us to discuss, we're open books. We're here to chat. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that follow, and thanks again for joining us. And
just want to say a quick shout out. Sorry, Spud. Just want a quick shout out to Mark Smith and also to Mark South, who have been in touch with us recently on the social medias and have been giving us some really nice feedback. So more than likely on the next episode, there were a couple of points that Mark South raised that would be really good discussion points, and I agree. So we'll look at those in the next episode.
Yeah, Mark, we'll definitely have a touch off them next week. I mean, obviously we had a very specific episode tonight, but we'll get back to the topic point next week. And within the week, if anyone else wants us to add a few topics for that till next week's conversation, and just hit us up, hit that like, hit that follow, hit that subscribe. And now all I'm going to wrap this up with is an up the Villa.
Up the Villa.